Hey Snapchat, coming to you from LAX. Today we're talking about stock options at a startup. I'm covering the topic of stock options because it's the most asked question of me for people who have been following my Snapstorms. I'm going to start with 101 and then I'm going to get to slightly more complicated topics. Stock options are of course what you grant potential employees who are about to join your company. They usually have a 1-year cliff and a 4-year vest. What the cliff means is they don't start earning until they've passed the cliff, until they've passed 1 year. If someone works for you for 4 months, they don't deserve to walk away with stock options. And of course, the vesting period is the period at which they earn those options. So if they get 1% of the company over a 4-year vest, they earn 25% of that each year. The first big question people don't think much about in stock options is, what is the strike price? The strike price is the price that the employee has to pay for the stock option when they actually get it. In the US, this is usually determined by a 409A valuation, and it's a percentage of the preferred stock option price. Now I'm going to get to slightly more complicated topics that people tend not to understand as well about stock options. As an employee, have you ever asked yourself what happens if the company gets bought 2 years into my stock option plan? Some stock options have something called acceleration. Acceleration means that even though I have a 4-year vest and I'm only 2-year vested, the rest of my stock actually comes to me early. There are 2 conditions in which you might accelerate your stock early. Number 1 is called acceleration on change of control. Change of control basically means the company gets bought. So what they're saying is if it gets bought 2 years into a 4-year vest, you still get all 4 years vested. The second condition in which you may accelerate is acceleration on termination without cause. This means you basically forward accelerate stock if you're fired, but you didn't do something egregiously wrong. Acceleration on change of control usually only gets granted to the top employees in a company, if anybody at all. And then you have 2 things to understand: single trigger and double trigger. Almost no startup companies get single trigger acceleration. The first trigger is being acquired, so on single trigger acceleration you get all your stock vested, you own all of it, nothing else happens. Double trigger, which is more standard, says that you get your stock option invested if you're acquired and you're terminated after an acquisition. And then the question is, on a change of control, do you get 100% accelerated or 50% accelerated? These are all negotiating points with your VC, and I want to emphasize usually only senior people in a company get acceleration on change of control. Acceleration on termination without cause is even harder for people to get, but there are some circumstances where you can get it. If you're a founder, you may try to negotiate this, and basically what you're saying is, I don't want you to be able to fire me and take all my stock back. If you do get fired, the investors are going to need some amount of stock to allocate to an incoming CEO. So it's not unreasonable for them not to give you 100% acceleration on termination without cause, but maybe 50%, maybe 25%. Now I want to get into advanced topics. Some companies are starting to eschew the typical 25% per year vesting schedule. Some companies are going to a schedule that looks more like 10, 20, 30, 40. In that kind of vesting schedule, 70% of the value of your stock option program is vested in the last 2 years of your 4-year period. The mentality of founders who do this kind of program is, look, in the first year or 2, you're not delivering as much value, so I want you to have an incentive to stay. You have to remember that stock options are normally a retention program. It's designed to share value with those people who stay and deliver value. I have a lot of sympathy with these programs because they reward people who stay, and then you can turn around and offer acceleration if your company is acquired early. Some companies are moving to a 6-year vesting program. The problem with that is we're in a competitive market and it's hard for employees to sign up to that. The final advanced topic is, when are you actually allowed to buy your stock? This is called the exercise period. So here's the thing they never taught you at Harvard Business School about stock options. Many companies have very short periods of time for which you can exercise your stock options when you leave the company. If you have 90 days to exercise once you leave the company, what it basically means is once you leave, you've got 90 days to come up with cash. The hard thing about that is you often don't know if your stock options are going to be worth anything or not, or you may not have cash to exercise in the first place. And nobody ever told you about that. So a lot of people end up letting their stock options lapse because they don't have cash to exercise their options once they leave. The balancing act is for founders, this may actually be a good thing because if you quit early and didn't deliver value, it's not clear you need to walk away with value. For employees, if you feel like you put in your blood, sweat, and tears and you want to own those stock options, of course you're going to want longer period to exercise. Depending on the situation, it is potentially negotiable. If you're exiting as a good leaver, it's not unreasonable to try and extend your exercise period, maybe up to 6 months. That at least gives you a window of time to figure out whether or not you believe your stock options are worth value and whether or not you may be able to come up with the money. I understand very well that there's founders on one side, employees on another, and they may take a different view on stock options. My simple view is that stock options are a retention program and they're designed to reward loyalty. I personally feel like we've gone slightly too far in making people feel like if you leave after 1 year of service that you deserve to have value. You deserve some value, no doubt about it, but the question is how much relative to the people who are staying and doing the hard work. But in any event, understanding how your exercise period on stock options matters a lot. That's all I've got. I hope you've understood the issue of stock options just a little bit more than before you tuned in.